And so, let's see. Okay, it's 3 o'clock. We're ready to go. Thanks, everybody. My name is DJenkins. I'm going to talk to you for the next 45 minutes or so about this nasty problem right here. Corrosion in the old diesel tank. Okay? My company is Iron Mike Global, and we're representatives worldwide for Fuel Right and Iron Ox, and we are focused like a laser beam on solving nasty corrosion problems in hostile environments. And in diesel tanks and in sumps, they're some of the nastiest known to man. Okay. It is on audience participation, so feel free to ask any questions. Okay. Just use the chat box. And if anybody has a microphone out there, please turn it off. We had a little glitch this morning, and my data spiked, and we had some issues, so we had to cut this short. So if you have a mic, turn it off, please. Thank you. Okay. This is all about corrosion in the diesel, and the telltale sign is if you cut open your filter and you got a handful of rust chips, you stick a magnet in there and that's rusty, you got yourself a problem. Okay, that is the beginning sign of a problem. So we're going to walk you through these problems and how we go about solving and how some other people go about solving them. So here's some nasty corrosion affecting springs and valves. Here's another corrosion from our friends at the Virginia DOT. They are perhaps the most comprehensive people in the United States on solving corrosion problems. They spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of engineers to tackle this problem, and I'm proud to say they use Fuel Right. So we have a very, very good study from the Virginia Department of Transportation, who spent a lot of money, and again, 3 years on this issue. Okay. There's some other corrosion, some indicators for you guys out there. If you see corrosion on your shear valves, on your piping, if you see this nasty black stuff in any of your filters, that's a sign. Corrosion is sure to be coming. Okay. Here's some other pictures. This is from Florida, and this is something that failed. It basically broke because of corrosion. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, how to prevent premature equipment failure. Okay. Some other signs, most of you don't stick your head in your tank. However, this is a bottom of a fuel tank, and it's got corrosion. You can see it right here. Okay. And eventually it pits, or the wall thickness gets thinner from the outside or the inside, doesn't really matter. And eventually there's not enough steel there to hold the fuel, and pop, it leaks. Okay. We are getting deeper into the fill tubes and the drop tubes and the spill buckets, and man, they got just as much corrosion as other places. Okay, you can see the corrosion. Here's the inside of a tank. See those little pits over there? Small pits turn into big pits, turn into big problems. And again, the primary frustration for folks out there is, hey, this equipment ain't cheap, and it's supposed to last a long time, and now you got to replace your equipment. Okay, not good. If you guys have trucks out there, I spent a lot of time at truck stops, and people complain a lot about slow pumps. So if you have slow diesel pumps, yeah, these truck drivers chatter, okay, and they tell everybody on the radio, hey, don't stop at that place. Okay, so that's lost business. And the big thing for me, I'm passionate about the environment, and leaks turn into groundwater problems, so we want to prevent that. Okay. So, today we're going to talk about this corrosion. Is it a ticking time bomb? I don't know. Okay, but I'm going to explore it with everybody today. Or is it cosmetic? Some people just go to bed, roll over, and hope the problem goes away. Well, I can tell you, it ain't going away, and it's just gaining on everybody, and now's the time to get ahead of the problem. So again, today we're going to focus on ULSD. Tomorrow we're going to do the sumps. A little bit about me. I'm an educator and a trainer, mostly in the heavy equipment business. I spent a lot of time in the oil business on the upstream side, mostly with Shell and Halliburton and Chevron, and digging for oil, and mostly with cranes. And became an accident investigator, and I led teams of accident investigation. And I went to a lot of clients, and suggested to them how to prevent future accidents. And that led me to kind of running a school on accident prevention. And I practiced a lot of preventative maintenance. And I'm trying to take what I learned in the fuel business, or in the crane business, put it in the fuel business. And my partner is also in the aircraft business, and he does a lot of preventative maintenance to make sure planes don't fall out of the sky. We put those two and two together, and it's a great combination to help people. So briefly, not to overload you on cranes, but these are typical crane accidents I went to, and why is that crane laying over, right? Same thing. Why is that fuel tank leaking? Well, there's reasons why the crane's laying over on its side, and there's reasons why the fuel tank's leaking, okay? And sometimes cranes hurt, some people die. Some people get knocked over, buildings knock off. And as I went to these companies, I tried to suggest to them, if you don't want the problem to happen again, you may have to change your methods, okay? So today, there's a lot of kind of old school methods in the fuel business that I don't particularly care for, and I think there's better ones out there. So we're going to explore those today, so how you can prevent an accident. All right, so which leads me, how I got into the fuel business, which leads me to the great state of Louisiana, which leads me to a guy named Leo down in Homa who had lots of corrosion in his fuel tanks. And he would always go back to the dealer and say, hey, what's wrong? Why am I getting so much corrosion? The dealer would say, hey, you're not removing the water. And this guy Leo said, I'm removing the water. And they would go back and forth. Leo would say, hey, you sold me a bad load of diesel. The dealer would say, hey, you're not taking care of your tank. And it would just back and forth. And they never bothered to change what they were doing, and the problems existed. And that's when kind of a light bulb went off in my head and said, hey, I could solve this problem. Not me totally, but I could get involved in solving this problem. And we do. So let's talk a little bit about corrosion. How big of a problem is it? Well, the EPA, led by a gentleman named Ryan Herrera, great guy. He's up in Washington, got the funds to do a study on fuel tanks around the country, and he determined that 80% of all the diesel tanks in the United States have moderate or severe corrosion. Okay? I could send anybody that report if they like it. Okay? Great guy, Ryan Herrera. Excellent department, by the way. I really like them. And they're doing their best to get ahead of this problem and head it off. And so if anybody wants his number, I'd be happy to give it to you. But he's the front man for the whole United States on preventing leaks. Great guy. Other things that are evidence that there's a corrosion problem. There's an organization right here called Astawamino, okay? And they have two guys, one named Chuck Ray and another guy named Mahesh Albuquerque. They are collecting data from all over the United States on corrosion. And what I understand, in the next couple months, they're going to have a corrosion database of all the tanks with problems, and they could compare who's got what problem. How are we solving it? Is it by refinery? Is it by geographic? Great, great people. And I'll be happy to give you that guy's name. And if you have issues, you can do anonymous and you share with this guy because they want to help you. So it's 50 states. They all belong to this organization, and they help with corrosion problems. Okay, cool. This guy down here, great organization. They're getting into it. They have some subcommittees on it. A guy named Robert Renkis. He's putting together some manuals, some task force. I don't agree with everything he says, but to give him credit, they are stepping up to the plate and trying to get to the bottom of this. And the contractors are seeing that, hey, there's a problem out here. We need to get ahead of this so our customers have enough money to pay them. So good organization, a good conference, and the guy's name is Robert Renkis. If you have suggestions, give them to him. Great guy. Okay. This organization is amazing. They started a forum on leaking fuel tanks after a big storm, and it's led by a guy named Tom Shrubin and Eric Dana. And they meet 6 times a year to talk about fuel tank leaking and prevention. And I went to a couple meetings, okay? And guess what? 80 to 90 people showed up, and everybody from the military to fuel tank dealers to truck rental companies, all interested in this corrosion. That's definitely evidence corrosion's a problem. And then the evidence, for me anyway, is the tank testers and the inspectors. Purport Engineering, Technology, Chronico, all the big boys, they're involved in this, and they share with me photographs, stories, that, hey, Dan, there's a lot of corrosion out there, and it is a problem. So good for them, good people, they want to get ahead of the problem. The other evidence I have is the lovely sump. Okay, I spent a lot of my time in this world as well, and there's a direct correlation between corrosion in sumps and corrosion in diesel tanks. So where does this happen? Everywhere in the United States. We do sumps all around the world. We do diesel tanks around the world, and it doesn't matter. I've been to California, I've been to Oregon, I've been to New York a lot, Florida, Texas, corrosion's everywhere. And it doesn't matter if it's 10,000 feet in Utah or down in Miami where it's like living in the Amazon jungle. There is corrosion, okay? I've seen it with my own eyes, and we get reports, we have customers, so we know it's a problem anywhere. Okay, so my goal today is to help everybody. I want to help you protect assets. I want to prevent equipment failure, and I really want to prevent a leak. Okay, so how did we get here? Okay, so if you read a lot of reports, there's about 4 what I think are factors that have got us here. So 2 big changes in laws. One is the Clean Air Act, and one is the Energy Independence Act, so we're not buying as much oil from the Middle East. And the big cities, New York, San Francisco, Portland, Denver, really pushed for changes in clean air. That resulted in changes in fuel. And we introduced new chemistries for fuel, new ingredients in fuel, whether corn or switchgrass, doesn't really matter. The fuel has changed over the last 10 years. So that's an issue. The other issue is the metal has changed. I happen to work for a metallurgist who examines metal. He looks at grain patterns at metal. He looks at contaminants in metal. And he says, hey, Dan, this ain't your father's metal anymore. Okay? So the metal has changed. And I could say the same for the poly side, the fiber side, the resin side. There's some differences, okay? And what's in the fuel affects it. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit. And I also think the majors pulling out. Chevron, Shell, Exxon, BP, they don't own as many sites as they did 20 years ago, so their engineers are not in this game that I can see, okay? So if they were, I would have met them at a conference and they would have talked to me about the corrosion, but I see them pulling out, and not a big asset if you ask me. Okay, let's talk about steel. Where does it come from? It comes from the ground, okay? It's mined, goes through a steel mill, goes through processing, and guess what? It wants to go back in the ground, so it oxidizes. Okay, so we know that steel at one time was organic, went through this mill, and it wants to return back to its natural state, and therefore you get rust. So steel's an issue. Let's talk a little bit about fuel. Where does it come from? It comes from the ground, right? It comes out of the bottom of the ocean. Whether it's dead whales or dead animals or vegetables, it comes out of the ground. It is a complex mixture of lots of organics, hydrocarbons, and it is an incredibly complex mixture, okay? And because of that, it has lots of organic compounds, okay? It's a food source, and guess what? It supports bacteria. Remember that. So all fuels, all water support some form of bacteria. Okay. Thanks, Janine or Jeannie. And yes, tell Ryan Herrera I said hello. Nice guy. Great, great person. So we have this fuel. It's organic and it supports bacteria. So let's talk about this bug for just a minute. Everybody's heard about it. There's about 30 or 40 known strands of it, whether it's fungi, yeast, or mold. Okay, really doesn't matter to me. I've looked in a lot of sumps. I've seen a lot of weird stuff. Okay, I've looked at a lot of sludge in my life. There's a lot of weird stuff, and they're all a little different. Okay, and these bugs come from the air. They come from the water. They come from dirt and debris. So somehow, some way, it's going to get in your tank. And there's really nothing you can do to stop it, okay? And it's always present in fuel. And because of this, we have this bacteria. It creates problems. And in particular, in our world, sludge and corrosion. A lot of people try and say, hey, I could stop these bugs from getting in my tank. I could stop these bugs from getting in my sump. They're too small. They're microscopic. You can't see them. So if you filled up 10 skyscrapers and the Statue of Liberty with paper clips, the amount of bugs present would be about a handful of paper clips. So they're microscopic. Please remember, they're microscopic. You can't see them. All the best pipe dope in the world, all the best filters in the world, all the best seals in the world ain't going to work because they're in the air and they're going to get in your system somehow, some way. So, how do these bugs create acid? Right? How do they create problems? Well, it's an organism, and it has a mouth, and it consumes food, and it consumes fuel, and it consumes water. And the end result, it poops or excrements, as they say, some acid. So there's some enzymes in there and some other stuff in there, and it makes acid. Remember that word, acid and acid value come from the bugs, okay? And we have a way to control that acid. Okay, so having said that, we have water and we have bugs in our fuel. All fuel contains it, and we can't stop it. Nobody can stop water from getting in the tank. Nobody. Okay, and we'll explain a little bit of that later. So, because of that, your whole system can be contaminated, from the pipeline to the loading rack, okay? And I'd like to take a minute and talk about this guy right here, the guy who delivers your fuel. You know, I can't do a show of hands today, but how many do you think these guys have absolutely pristine, residue, bacteria-free tanks? Okay, if anybody wants to chime in, please do. I've worked at some of the biggest tank washes in Florida, and I can assure you, these are disgusting, grotesque, full of crap tanks that come in to get cleaned, and they're just delivering fuel. Now, a lot of people want them sterile. It takes a long time, and it is very, very, very hard to get every piece of crap, out of that tank. Okay, so there is cross-contamination. There is water. They use this big sprinkler system with hot water and steam. And I'm telling you, I've been in them. It is very, very hard to get it all out. Okay, and most of the truck drivers that I've seen don't want to get it all out because they don't want to pay for it. Okay, so you're going to have some cross-contamination in your delivery system. I don't think there's anything we can do to avoid it. There's no laws against it. There's no way to test it. And it's very, very hard unless some federal inspector wants to stick their head in there and take random samples. It's going to be really hard. So it's going to happen. And it can happen to the best of them. The guys who keep it the cleanest could have the bug problem. So it's a problem. Okay, let's look at this diagram right here. This is a great diagram. I pulled it off the internet and gave a reference to it. But here's those bacteria. They're floating around. Okay? And what happens is they have to stick to something. So they land on your tank. The sidewall, the bottom, the bung, right? They land somewhere and they stick there. Okay? And how they stick is they make this colony and they make some glue. Okay? And they live in there. This is important. And eventually they colonize and they get really, really big. Okay? And you have this mat of glue. Okay? And it's basically comprised of dead fuel, water, sludge, debris, and eventually it ends its life and it matures and it's called sloughing, comes off, disperses, and that's what plugs your fuel filter. Okay? So you're always going to have, unless you take care of it, you're going to have this slime in your tank. Okay? And what happens, the water gets in that slime, touches the metal, and creates corrosion, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So remember this diagram. Okay? There you go. There's a great picture of sludge. So if you have someone who says, hey, Dan, hey, Phil, hey, Josh, I got me some sludge and I got me a plugged filter, that's a sign that you have problems to come. Okay, so now we know a little bit about sludge. Let's talk about water. Okay, again, you can't stop it. Impossible. We have water that's on the bottom of your tank. We have water that's dissolved in your tank, and we have this water that makes your fuel hazy. This is the problem. So you need to keep checking for hazy fuel. And I'll explain why that is. The hazy fuel supports the bugs. Okay? They stick to the parts and they cause rust. And it is bad news. So you look at these risers, you look at these fill tubes, chances are there's sludge on there. It's stuck there, the water stuck to it. A lot of people describe it as coffee grinds, and it's bad news. So if you have hazy fuel like this guy, mostly bad news. And eventually you get the rust chips and they clog your filter. Not good. Okay, let's talk about sludge just to review. It's water, it's bugs, it's fuel, it's debris, and it makes this nasty slime. Okay, keep your eyes out for the slime. Okay, keep your eyes out for the slime. Okay, and it can happen to the best of them. The guys who do the offshore tugboats and the offshore transport boats, they keep their system pristine. They have these massive inboard filters. Even the best of them have outbreaks because the bug gets through, settles in the bottom of the tank, and it starts his life all over again. Okay? So, to review, if you have sludge, you're probably going to have corrosion. Okay, so if you have these plugged filters, that's when you need to start paying attention. And so you add up the water, the acid from the bugs, and the oxygen, and that's how you get corrosion. So now that we got that down, some people term it MIC, microbial influence corrosion. That's how it does. That's how it starts. Okay, so you should, if you need more information, let me know. I got to move on a little bit. Okay, so people ask you, hey Dan, how long does it take for corrosion? How long is it going to start? When am I going to expect it? How can I keep it away? Well, our chemist at Fieldright says about 18 months is how long something really turns nasty. But he could determine in 6 months if you have the start of a problem. So if you have a brand new tank, you could have an indicator as soon as 6 months, just so you know. And I could share that with you sometimes after the webinar, how you can tell if you're going to have a problem. Okay, so to review, if you have water, and you have sludge, and you have metal, you're going to have corrosion. Any questions so far? Just use the chat room right there. Okie doke, let's move on. So let's look at some options, what people are using to address corrosion. So again, there's this guy up there, the EPA, Ryan Herrera and Tony, and these nice people up there, really, really good people. They have referenced several standards, okay? Steel Tank Institute is one, Clean Fuel Diesel Alliance is one, ASTM 6469. Those are some standards. I don't happen to like them very much, but they're there, okay? And I'm going to show you some differences. But also, to their credit, the EPA does recognize ours now, called filming amine technology, which we're going to talk about shortly. And here's what they recommend. Fuel polishing, tank cleaning, biocides, chemical water removers, tank linings, circulation, and the bottom one, filming amine. So I'm briefly going to go through these, and then I'm going to get to the filming amine. First, fuel polishing. Been around, is actually invented in my backyard in Florida. Takes nasty fuel, runs it through these mass filters, and it makes it looking clean. Okay? To their credit, they can get your filters clean. However, and it does have other benefits. It does remove sludge. I like to give credit to a lot of filter guys. They're good. Some are really nice people, and they do a good job. And it can remove some slime. But the big benefit is, hey, it gets the tanks clean now and gets you back up and running. So let's give credit where credit's due. The drawback is right here. Fuel polishing does not address the acidic value, okay? And fuel polishing does not get in hard to reach areas, okay? And it's expensive. So I think fuel polishing does work. It just does not address corrosion very well, okay? It's not a long-term solution, and these bugs are embedded in your tank, in your walls, in your equipment, and you're just not going to get them out with fuel polishing, okay? And a lot of people complain that they lost fuel, they lose fuel. 3, 4, 500 gallons at a time. So please pay attention to that. Same with tank cleaning. Sounds great in theory. You get the guy, you got him under duress, he's got problems in his tanks, send out the tank cleaner. Dirty business. Sometimes you got to cut a hole in it. Okay, it's messy, it blocks up the lanes. Very, very hard to do very well. Okay, a lot of nooks and crannies in there. It's hard to just stick a sprinkler system and a vacuum down there and think they're going to get everything out. So it's difficult. And if we go into man tanks, big ones, 10, 12,000 gallon tanks, it requires man entry. I'm a safety guy. I do not like man entry at all. Okay, and even if they shovel it, pressure wash it, steam clean it, guess what? The bacteria is still there, and you're going to get some sludge. Check out this sludge, guys. This is 6 months after tank cleaning in Daytona, Florida. Okay, the sludge comes back. So you have to be conscious of that, of tank cleaning. Good to do it once in a while, but it's not going to solve your corrosion problems. And I'm really against sandblasting. I'm a metal guy, I'm a corrosion guy, and I hate sandblasting. Okay, I do not like removing metal and reducing wall thickness. Okay, it destructs the tank, and so I encourage you not to do it. Okay, dangerous, and it's really, really hard to get it all out. Okay, and sometimes you're just pushing it into the steel. Okay, so to review, fuel polishing, tank clean, they do a good job, get you up and running. The bad part of it is you got some hazardous waste, and it does not address corrosion very well. Okay, let's talk about this other stuff. Biocides. Popular, okay, great marketing, great hook, kills the bugs, but guys, girls, it is impossible to kill all the bugs. It has its purpose. If you have a massive infestation, send out the biocide, the bug guy. It's actually a pesticide, a rodentcide, and it's got a lot of good name recognition. I'll give them credit, but it doesn't address corrosion. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so great marketing. I'm not a big fan of it unless you have a massive infestation. Okay, and it's very, very hard to get 100% kill. And the problem with the biocide is, for those of you who are getting lots of loads of fuel and lots of throughput, you're always going to be introducing new bugs. So therefore, you're going to have to add in more biocides. Not a good formula. So let's look at it again. There's the sludge. Okay. Here's the sludge. The biocides will not get into the sludge to kill the bacteria. That's its main problem, despite all the marketing hype. Okay. So there's my review. If you want to send a pesticide guy out, I would do it maybe once a year if you have to. Here's one other thing that's recommended, and I am buying steak dinners if anybody could tell me how fuel circulation will solve corrosion problems. I think it's a gimmick. I don't like it, and I see no place for it. But people want to do it, fine. But you're not going to solve your corrosion problems. Okay, here's one other thing I want people to pay attention to is this tank lining. Popular, okay? However, let's give credit where credit's due. If you have problems and you need repairs, you can't replace the tank, it is a good tool for repairs and extends tank life. So it does have its place in this equation. The problem is many. Okay, you got humans entering a tank. Not a good thing. And I tell you, I'm a surface prep guy, and it's really, really hard to remove the rust. And I will argue with anybody that when you sandblast and abrasive blast, you're not removing all the rust. In fact, you're pushing a lot of rust into the steel, and you're just not going to be able to see it. So to the human eye, it looks like they got rid of all the rust, but in reality, you don't. Okay. And it's very hard to treat the existing corrosion. And that's why you hear a lot of stories about lining failures, okay, because they cannot address the corrosion. You just can't smother up the corrosion. And if you do the tank lines, which is okay, if you need the repairs, you're going to have time and budget for inspections. Okay, and you may have to cut a hole in your tank. Not good. I don't recommend cutting any hole in any fuel tank. Okay, and I don't think there's any engineer out there who would want a hole cut in their tank. And to these steel tank manufacturers' credit, okay, they are stepping up to the plate, and a couple of them are now going to make access points for people to inspect the tanks and get in there and do tank cleaning versus cutting a hole in it. So I want to congratulate some of the steel tank manufacturers out there who are stepping up into the plate and saying, hey, we got a problem, we're going to help people out. Anybody got a question? Fire away in that sludge thing. Okay. Excuse me. Fire away in the chat room. Okay. So how do we solve this corrosion problem? How do we solve it in diesel tanks? Well, I thought you never asked. So here's we go. I represent FuelRight, and we use what's called dual filming amine technology. Invented by a guy who had 28 years at DuPont, senior corrosion engineer who went around the world solving corrosion problems. And he realized this bug is really really resilient, and it's a survivor. It's hard to get out. Okay? He went to cooling towers and wastewater treatment plants, and they started using filming amine technology because the bugs and the biocides did not kill the bugs all the time. Here's how it works. They treat the tank. See this green thing right here? That is a microscopic film that goes in the tank. The sludge is still there. The fuel doesn't address the fuel. It just addresses the tank. But eventually, the sludge is released from the filming amine. It doesn't like it, and the sludge is still there. Okay? And the beauty of it is this. Eventually, the sludge is put into small particles, and they get smaller and smaller, and they go up through your pickup tube with your water, by the way, in micro emulsion, and they pass right through your filter and right out the back of your engine. It's a really cool way to solve this problem. I got videos of it, I got testimonials, we got testing. So again, the sludge is still there. We just break it up into a gazillion little pieces and drag a bunch of small particles of water through your filter and out the back of someone's engine harmlessly. So that is the crutch of filming amines. Again, it's microscopic. You can't see it. You just pour it in the tank. It coats the surfaces of the tank, and it works. And it addresses the sludge. And also, this coating does not allow new sludge to grow. So nothing's going to be able to stick to it, okay? It stops the existing corrosion. The corrosion's still there. It just stops the new corrosion from forming. So we address sludge and corrosion at the same time, okay? So that's cool. Again, it's hard to explain in 15 minutes, but I got some videos on it, and I'd be happy to send it to you. Yes, we have papers. I have documentation. We actually test through Brookhaven National Lab, Battelle Labs. So it's a unique way to solve this problem. It's different than biocides, completely different from biocides, because we don't kill anything and we don't try and kill anything. Okay, how long does this last? Good question, Ray. It depends on your throughput. Now, I know Ray, he runs a busy station and he gets a lot of throughput. So, so I'll get to that in just a second. So typically in a non-busy station that gets only 2 to 3 fills a month, you got to do about once a quarter. Okay? If you're getting a busy station and you're getting 4 and 5 deliveries a month, right, then you're going to have to add more. But the dilution ratios change. So today I'm going to focus on the stations that don't get a lot of deliveries fast. Okay, so again, we dissolve the slime, coats the wetted surfaces, and we protect the steel. Even if there's water in the tank, we protect the steel. And again, you can't stop the water. The other thing is it has a little lubricity in it. It has some cleaning agents in there. And this is important. I can't read it, but it pulls some of that water through your system in really, really, really small bubbles, and it blows out the back of the engine with no harm whatsoever. Okay, so let's get on with it. So people want to know about fuel rate. They want to know about filming amines. Hopefully I explained it to you. And for generator tanks, someone asked a question on generator tanks. If the tank is dirty, okay, I would say 2 or 3 times in the first quarter, and then back off to once in a quarter. Okay, works in generator tanks. A lot of tugboats use it. Ferries. People with corrosion problems, and people who hate paying for tank cleaning are the people that use it, basically. It's easy. There's no mixing. It's kind of economical. It's got a really high dilution rate, and it's easy to measure success. And I'm going to show you why. So there's a nasty filter, and if you use Fuel Right, you get a nice clean filter. And I recommend people. It's nice if people use it to prevent it and not let it get to this way. But unfortunately, society, I think there's not too many people that practice preventative maintenance in the fuel business from day one. Not too many. Okay, so a little bit more about Fuel Right. I'm happy to send anybody the Virginia DOT study. We do a lot of business with the Florida Turnpike. It's an emergency road. They have to stay open 24/7 during hurricanes. They cannot afford to be down. We have some big Caterpillar dealers who have massive sludge and corrosion problems that even own fuel polishing and tank cleaning equipment use our stuff. We're all over the world. And again, I have lots of corrosion testing that I could show people. Okay, so how do we start? You basically have 4 things you got to do. Janine, are you concerned about emergency doors? Absolutely, particularly in the hospital, particularly in data centers. It's a problem. And I'll walk you through this exercise, and I'll tell you what we could do with emergency generators. Okay. And it really doesn't matter, Janine, if the fuel is turned over or it's not turned over. It is a myth that people say, oh, the more fuel I get, the less problems I have. I don't believe it. The more fuel you have, the more turnover of fuel you have, the more water you introduce, and the more bugs you introduce, and the more air you introduce. That's a recipe for disaster. Okay? So it doesn't matter if the tank is idle or busy. You're going to get the bugs, and you're going to get the water. So how do you start? You got to tell us how big's your tank, okay? How much fuel do you keep in your tank, and how often you fill your tank. So busy stations, you know, there's some truck stops that get 2-3 deliveries a day, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about cold flow. If you're in a frozen tundra somewhere, that's a subject for a separate date. You just send us the information. How cold is it, and how long does it stay cold, and we can suck it. Okay, we got a question, okay? It says, and they don't have much, yes, and yes, Jonathan, a lot of generators are behind the times. And I can take a minute here to say, I don't, and I respectfully, again, everything I say is with respect, I don't think you're going to fuel polish and filter your way out of a corrosion problem. I know these big hospital chains, they get these big orders, and they load up on filters and filtration and automatic this, automatic that, and filter, okay? But basically, they're just filtering the problem away. They're really not addressing the core issue, okay? So it's good for some contractors, not good for the hospital. So there's my 2 cents on hospital generators, okay? So we have a product called 15K. It's been around a long time, proven the test of time. So you would order some. Again, you give us this information. How big is your tank, right? It's diluted typically 1 to 6,000 gallons. So if you have 3,000 gallons in your tank, put a half gallon in. Okay? You have 12,000 gallons in your tank, you put 2 gallons in. And again, I would say for most people, once a quarter, 5 times a year, okay? That's what it takes to keep the corrosion away. If you have a nasty tank and you don't want to pay for fuel tank cleaning, right? You may have to, depending on how nasty it is. But if you add Fuel Right, you are going to be releasing that sludge, okay? And you will be changing filters, okay? Because you are releasing a lot of sludge. And as most people know who are on this webinar, there's a lot of sludge out there. And it's going to might take 3 months, might take 2 months, might take 5 months. Don't know. Every sludge is a little different. Every tank's a little different. But once those filters start cleaning up, right, you could back off once a quarter. And I'm going to jump right here, I'm going to jump right here. Okay, I'd like everybody to pay attention to this device right here. It's $75. It's the best investment you'll ever buy, okay? Because it's basically a can opener for your filters. If you want to know if you got a problem, every time the guy changes a filter, you cut it open, okay? And you get yourself a $5 magnet. And you put that magnet in there, and if you got rust chips, you got yourself a problem. You got sludge, you got stuff. And that is the best way. I know there's a lot of test kits out there. Some of my clients use test kits. Power to them. But I love the filter cut opener. It's by Longacre, $75. Order it from Amazon. Comes in a week. And cut your filter open. I am an accident prevention guy. Spent most of my career preventing cranes from falling over. I inspected a lot of cranes. I led teams of inspectors. We inspected cranes. A lot of people do not inspect their filter. And so if I could tell you any good things, inspect your filter. Get a magnet and test it for corrosion. That is the easiest, best test you'll ever do. How does it get to the top of the tank into the risers? Okay, great question. I don't have the diagram in front of me, but the ullage space is a challenge. There's no question about it. The ullage space is a challenge. So what you have to do is Fuel Right only works on wetted spots. And I have that in one of my slides. Hang on, sir. Here we go. So here is the picture right here. Fuel Right only works in wetted spots. So if we come up 90% on Friday night and fill the tank up and let it settle for a couple of days, we are addressing the wet areas of the tank. We do not address the ullage space. You have to fill the tank. There's a lot of states that don't allow you to fill the tank all the way. If I had 100 grand, I could solve that problem. But right now, I don't have 100 grand in my pocket. But there are some people working on the ullage space. It's very complex. It's a big tank. There's a lot of issues with warranties and so forth. So it hasn't been solved yet. Okay, there's a guy out there with a nitrogen blanket, and best of luck to him. Good guy too. So, does that answer your question, Ron? You have to fill the tank up. You got to leave the fuel in the wetted area. Okay, you got to leave it in the wetted area. The film has to attach, so it takes a day or so to attach. So you want to do it kind of when the tank is idle. Okay. John Shirt, does Fuel Right have higher density than diesel? It is microscopic. I would have to ask my chemist. I can tell you the pH is between 10 and 11, so it's on the alkaline side, and that is something that balances the corrosion, which we've been talking about. Keep asking the questions. Does it sink to the bottom? Yes. Fuel Right, let's go back here, back a little bit. Fuel Right attaches to all the surfaces in the tank. It attaches to the piping. It attaches to the piping in the dispenser. It is a fuel system treatment. So this green film, again, it's microscopic. You can't see it, just like you can't see the bacteria. It attaches to all the metal surfaces, okay? And it's good in poly tanks. It won't do any corrosion in the poly tanks, but it will certainly help you break up sludge in your poly tanks. And the poly tanks have their issues too. The resin tanks have their issues too. Someone just sent me a bunch of pictures of delamination in tanks, and that's kind of a subject for another day. Does it do the partition? Yes, it does. It gets all the nooks and crannies. When it's added to the tank, it's self-dispersing. There's no agitation. It's actually alive. If I could show it to you. Where is it? So when you get this bottle, it's actually alive. It's actually not bubbling, but it's ready to do its business. So it's going to go out and find the corrosion in your tanks, okay? So, and it's going to address them. So we got a few more minutes here. Again, I recommend this filter cutter, okay? I recommend Fuel Right as well. If you have cold flow issues, just send us the temperature, and we're happy to help you out. Okay. Slightly different subjects. It's kind of a different subject depending on how much flow you have and exposed piping and so forth. Just send it to me at the Iron Ox. And I just want to give people an overview today that we have some technology that's proven, that works, that addresses this nasty corrosion without biocides, limited tank cleaning, reduced filter changes, and it's unique, it's different, and again, it is geared towards this microbial influence corrosion, which it's a tough problem. Okay, okay, couple questions. So I'm going to be closing up there. If any of your questions, fire away. How do you formulate Fuelrite? Fuelrite is formulated in Wilmington, Delaware, and it's overseen by a professional engineer named Bob Tatnall, a NACE corrosion engineer. Yes, there is ordering info. Yes. So we have that, and here's my info. Right here. Hang on, buddy. Whoop, right there. So there's my phone number. We have reps around the country. There's my email, DJenkins Iron Ox. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be talking about sumps, okay? And that has its own specific problems. I just wanted to give you an overview. I'm going to send this out to people, and if anybody's interested in documentation, engineering testing, engine testing, we are about solving the corrosion problem, okay? Anybody else? I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. If you have any questions, fire away. Comments, put in the chat room. There's my email. Again, it's hard to cram everything in 45 minutes, but I just want to share with you that we're now we're working with 4 big steel tank manufacturers. They realize this problem's not going away, and they're not going to warranty their way out of it. Okay, they have to address the corrosion. There is a corrosion problem, and we're on top of it. So anybody, fire away on some questions. Is the Fuelrite an aqueous solution? No, it's not water-based. Okay, I'd have to ask though to be sure. It's amine-based, is what I understand. Okay. Don't forget, tomorrow we have the sump at 12 and 3, and will it freeze? Janine, I will get that to you. We have some documentation on freeze. It will freeze. Yes, it will freeze. Okay. So you have to store it in a vented, not dark, but you got to store it. You can't store it outside in the freezing cold weather. So it has limitations on freezing. Yes, it does. Any other questions? By the way, I'm going to stay here. Thank you. And Jean, I don't know how to spell your name, but send me your email. I would like to communicate with you. I'd like to share with you what we're doing. We're working on the ASTM. We're working with steel tank manufacturers, contractors. This is a problem, and you need some smart solutions. And some of the old stuff just don't work very well. Okay. Yes, I can send you information, Randell. No problem. Good. Okay. And I'm recording this today. I'd be happy to send it out. I've been happy to send out the slides. I had a little glitch this morning. Unfortunately, I had too many people logging on at the same time, and my mouse got excited and my thing froze up. So apologize for that. Keep firing away the questions. I'm here. And I have videos I can send people and all kinds of stuff. So let's go back. Anybody questions? Where can I get copy slides? John, send me a request through my email right here. I'll be happy to send you slides. Okay? I'd be happy to record it. We are recording it, and give us a little time and we'll upload it for you. Do you have a lot of experience with ASTs versus USTs? Yes. Fuelrites, there are different issues now in ASTs versus USTs because the temperature. We didn't get too much in temperature. If you come tomorrow at the sump, we'll be talking more about temperature. But there's a lot of moisture in above ground tanks, which you don't have in below ground tanks because there's more temperature swings. So Fuelrite sells to a tremendous amount of above ground tanks in the home heating oil business, and that's where they got their start. I'd be happy to send out the slides to anybody. And is it, again, I don't know if it's Gene or Jeannie, but happy to help you. And happy to share with what we're doing to help this industry. This is a big problem. Particularly, and I'd just like to take a second and share with you on the military, big problems overseas. They got a lot of diesel equipment and a lot of tanks are buried in the side of a mountain, and they got big issues, you know, and we're stepping up to help them. Okay, that's it for today. I've gone to my 50 minutes. Thank you much. Here's my email. Any comments, questions, just shoot them to me, and we're happy to help you out. Thanks much. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'm going to end this thing, and call me if you need me. Thank you so much.